everyone. So welcome to Beyond the Future of Work, which is our 8th pop-up institute supported by my office, the Office for the Vice President for Research. And so the overarching goal of our 2021 pop-up is to bring together multidisciplinary scholars to consider the past, present, and the future of work. This group considers historical work patterns and how they continue to shape our society today. It's further engaged in how the nature of work and how we value work and workers continues to change in the present. And I'm sure all of you appreciate and recognize the large-scale changes in work life caused by the global pandemic are going to have permanent impacts on all of our working lives. And of course, the group is using the knowledge of the past and the present to imagine how working life might be altered in the future to support more equitable lives for all of our workers. So I'm really excited about this event and the fact that over the next 4 weeks, we're going to be bringing together many scholars, advocates, and activists from all around the world whose efforts touch upon these key themes that are approached by the pandemic. Our events are going to be organized in 5 focus areas. With each of our UC researchers who've been leading our pop-up have been engaged in these 5 areas over the past year. And so we'll hear a little bit about their shared work and the work of others around the world who touches upon this. So we'll have events focused on critical perspectives in AI and technology that are meant to explore ways to catalyze technological change that's also in the public interest. And they'll critically examine the radical transformations that technology is having not only on labor markets, but on workers and their livelihoods themselves. So this cluster of events will evaluate how new forms of entrepreneurism enabled by digital platforms in the gig economy, and we'll look at proposals put forward by many to address how the impacts of tech innovation on the workers left behind. So one event I'm particularly looking forward to in this cluster is the conversation that we've entitled, "What's Wrong with the Gig Economy?" And that's happening next Tuesday, June 1st. We also have a series of events clustered on what we're calling essential work. And this particular focus begins to examine the definitions and implications of the designation of quote unquote essential work, both in the past, the present, and moving into the future. So we're particularly interested in how a myriad of laws, regulations, and economic policy have combined to create low income, highly racialized workforce that is simultaneously essential and expendable. So UT's Rappaport Center and the Harvard Institute for Global Law and Policy are going to host a discussion that springs from the recent joint book project exploring the essential work in construction, agricultural, and apparel industries, among others. And that's happening this Thursday, and it's titled Beyond Equality, Case Studies. And next week on June 3rd, even more UT researchers and others will discuss their research on essential work at the event titled Essential for What? So our third theme is the care work pop-up cluster. And those questions are inherited from models from waged and unwaged caring through engaging a broader conversation on immigration, gender, sexuality, racial exclusion, and social justice to imagine the future care of care work. The pandemic has really kind of laid bare for many of us these issues, as it has resulted in the shutting down of daycares, temporary closures of schools, elder care facilities, and for rural hospitals. When these things happen, the burden for caring are transferred to individual women within households, many of whom have lost formal employment. So the pop-up will host an event focused on restructuring care labor, where participants will share their work on transforming this caring crisis that has been shaping up over decades. And that's happening next Tuesday, June 8th. Oh, sorry, on Tuesday, June 8th. Our fourth cluster, which is on the future of work across the global South, considers the ever increasing forms of inequality as a backdrop against the crumbling options for large swaths of the world's poor to make a living. So by paying attention to the relationship among colonialism, the rise of nation states, and the spread of global forms of migration, both the facilitation and restriction of those, this cluster posits the global South as a crucial vantage from which to critique contemporary narratives about the future of work. So June 9th's Heroes of the Global South panel will discuss low-wage migrant laborers and their role in the global economy. And our final cluster, which is one that focuses on the future of artistic labor, highlights the many of ways that the future of artists has emerged as an urgent question, both for universities and the wider public. The importance of the creative arts is lost on funders that often clamor to define value through indices such as contributions to GDP and growth. while COVID-19 protocols for sheltering in place and social distancing have decimated the livelihoods that relate to performance. This cluster focuses on the non-economic and public benefits of the arts and the humanities on campuses and in the community. And these benefits will be explored among other events, June 11th, for Love and Money, the Future of Arts and Humanities. So I really want to thank our Pop-Up Institute leaders, Karen Engel and Neville Horde, who are sharing a screen today, who together with postdoctoral scholar Michal Khan have brought together a creative group of scholars to address some of the most important questions our society is facing today. I'm really impressed by the volume and diversity of the speakers that we're having, both from within UT and our guest speakers from abroad. And I'm looking forward to many of the discussions we're going to have over the coming weeks. I know you've been working toward today's launch of the pop-up for over the past year, and your dedication in convening scholars to this incredibly timely topic is very much appreciated. So now I'm going to turn things over to Karen and Neville for their own opening remarks. Karen is the Minerva House Drysdale Regents Chair in Law and founder of the Bernard and Andre Rappaport Center for Human Rights and Justice, where she currently serves as co-director. As a scholar, she focuses on international human rights law, international criminal law, and Latin American law. Neville is an associate professor of English and the co-director of the Rappaport Center. His research focuses on race, homosexuality, and globalization. So Karen and Neville, over to you.
Many thanks, Ali, for that terrific introduction to the pop-up. It was really fun to hear the events that you picked out and the breadth of what we know is there, but we haven't been able to we're looking forward to beginning to see happen this week. So there were even other events, but that was a terrific public service announcement, and we really appreciate it. We'd like to thank you, Vice President Preston, and the Office of the Vice President for Research for coming up with the idea of the pop-up institutes to begin with, and of course for selecting our proposal. It's been terrific to have your support and your experience in ways that we'll talk about in a moment, but in helping us figure out not just how to do the pop-up, but how to make it work in this virtual environment. And as an opening to beginning to have in-person events, Neville and I thought that we would bring our vaccinated selves together. But even though we've been doing it virtually all year, it's been really helpful getting especially Eliza Scarborough's input on how to maintain basically the emphasis that you always have on collaboration and idea generation. So welcome all to the culmination of, as Ali said, at least a year's worth of work. While it is a culmination, it is also a beginning. This is our first chance to engage with most of the presenters that we'll be hearing from over the course of the next 3 weeks, even some of our own folks at UT. And we're hoping to spark new discussions and collaborations with and among them, as well with the nearly 300 participants from around the world who we anticipate over the course of the 3 weeks. Please know that people are welcome to attend any or all events. So we hope that those who have joined us today will help spread the word. Just because you missed today doesn't mean that you can't appreciate other events in the pop-up. Now, if you all have had a chance to look at the calendar, and I think that's how Ali came up with her list for you, so that was a good indication that the interactive calendar is working. You know that the Pop-Up Institute is a 5-ring event, and Ali just named those 5 rings. So we thought we'd spend a bit of time this morning taking you through the 5 research clusters in a little bit more detail to give you a sense of how you might make the most of the events over the next 3 weeks and find new possible collaborators. So thanks to the help of UT graduate Ambuj Tawari, we have the start of a website that serves as a guide for the pop-up, and that also will be a place for us to house the proceedings as well as future research and advocacy. You've already seen some part of it if you're joining us today, probably because you used it to get to us. But he's added a lot to it over the last few days, and we thought it was worth pointing those out to you to show you the functionality of the site and some of the resources it offers. And in fact, we thought that's really a terrific way to describe in a little bit more detail what we are hoping to do in the pop-up. So I will share my screen now and go to the logo for you to see. There, if you can, there are actually a lot of people. So the website contains people and ideas, and we thought that we would start by giving you talking about some of the people involved in the pop-up.
Okay. Here is our fabulous team of participatory researchers from 6 different colleges across campus. College of Liberal Arts, the Law School, the LBJ School of Public Affairs, Moody College of Communications, the Dell Medical School and the College of Fine Arts, and we also collaborated with Texas Performing Arts. You will have plenty of opportunity to see these faces over the next 3 weeks. We had many meetings over the course of the last 6 months, setting things up and establishing and deepening the relationships we already had with each other. These researchers are all participating in 1 or more research clusters, which Addie told you about, but we'll elaborate some more later, along with close to 50 additional faculty and students from across campus. Many people not among the original participatory researchers also came to play very important roles over the course of the pop-up, and you'll get to meet them as well. The Rappaport Center is very grateful to, in addition to the UT Office of the VP for Research, the many co-sponsoring institutions listed here. The Lloyd M. Benson Jr. Chair in Government Business Relations, the South Asia Institute, Lila Benson Latin American Studies and Collections, and Good Systems. Okay, but behind each of these institutions are many people who've been indispensable to the making of the pop-up. Some you've already seen pictures of, but I'd like to give special shout outs to Professor Jamie Galbraith for the Lord Benson Chair Funds, Shamala Rudrapa, Chair of the South Asia Institute, and the wonderful leader of our Care Work Cluster, Sam Baker and Sherry Greenberg for Good Systems, as well as our other formidable cluster leaders who organized many of the events we're going to enjoy. But we absolutely would not be here today, virtually or in any other way, without the wonderful Liza Scarborough, Director of Faculty Development at UT's Office of the Vice President for Research. Okay, we've never done a pop-up before. Liza's done many. And so her guidance was indispensable. I'm sorry, Liza, we didn't use many of the various platforms you suggested to us. I mean, our Zoom brand loyalty is probably a sign of me being a Luddite, but your help was indispensable in putting this all together. So thank you, Liza. At the Rappaport Center, if Sarah Eliason did not keep us all together, I think the future of our own work would be very much in doubt. So thank you to Sarah for being the glue of the Rappaport Center, for all kinds of affective labor that often go invisible, that you do with such aplomb, and just for your resilience and for actually making the move to the virtual feel seamless, even though I know it wasn't. I'd also like to thank Sabrina Barton, our Administrative Associate and Development Specialist, who proofread more documents that she probably cares to remember, while working on other funding proposals as well as the pop-up. So thank you, Sabrina. And then there was Michelle Khan, our postdoctoral fellow, who probably wrote, and I'm not exaggerating, thousands of emails, who organized weekly cluster meetings for nearly all the clusters, who managed to keep, I don't know, 1,000 balls in the air, also contributing her own researches on post-slavery labor regimes in South Asia. And actually, we would not have the Global South cluster in the kind of form it was, if not for Michelle's intellectual leadership there. So we're hugely relieved to be here. There were a few moments last week where I thought, okay, maybe we won't, this future of work won't happen. But here we are, and that's largely thanks to everybody I've mentioned, but particularly Michelle, Liza, Sarah, and Sabrina. We also have fabulous law graduate students and undergraduate interns and scholars who've done a lot of work over the last year. I particularly want to thank Megan Nguyen and Isabel Salas, who made this wonderful logo that you could see on the screen and you could see behind Karen's head here. It's always very exciting when we get interns with strong visual sensibilities and who can make beautiful logos and posters for us. Okay, Karen, back to you.
All right. I said we've been working on this project for a year, and maybe I'll just stop sharing for a moment. But in fact, the origins go back even further. In work that the Rappaport Center has been doing on the legal and political drivers of inequality for some time. So about 2 years ago, we began to convene workshops with a small group of scholars, mostly from outside of UT, but not only, to explore the methods of racial capitalism, world system theory, and distributional analysis for the deeper understanding they provide of what is often called inequality. And we began to think about how to apply a synthesis of those methods to challenge dominant discourses about the future of work. And you'll be able to hear more about this week during the two events on Wednesday and Thursday. So one of which Ali already mentioned on Thursday, which involves case studies by authors. Authors will talk about case studies that will be a part of a book that's coming out of that project. And also on Wednesday, the panel on global racial capitalism is very much tied to the project. But we decided we needed sustained engagement from a wider group of researchers, and we needed to take advantage of the breadth that our own institution offers. So that's when the idea for the pop-up emerged. And we began to work on the proposal before COVID-19. And I think that's important because obviously COVID-19 had a huge impact on the project as it developed, including in the way that we did the project, as I've already suggested. But we quickly discovered that the pandemic rendered the issues around economic justice that we were studying even more urgent, illuminating and exacerbating the vulnerabilities of workers on the margins of, if essential to, global capitalism. While as privileged academics, we were able to work from home, continue to do the pop-up, and continue, most importantly, to be paid, the same is not true for many of those who sustain our way of life. So that was just to give you a sense of how the pop-up builds into other work that we're doing. And so we hope really the combination of them will, and maybe I should say even the synergies developed around those two projects will continue to have impacts at UT and elsewhere.
Okay, since Ali Preston did such a good job of outlining the clusters, I'm going to be a little brief and brutal. We start with the AI and technology cluster because A, it's alphabetical, and B, it was formative to our thinking about the pop-up. So if Karen can just, all right, you can read this quickly by yourselves. I know you can all read much faster than I can speak, but I think that gives a sense that we're reacting to a sense that actually the future of work is only going to be about these kinds of questions. And it was sort of clear to us as we did more research and as we assembled people that actually the future of work was going to look a lot more like its past and its present, along similar with fault lines of vulnerability similarly distributed, and that actually technology would make a difference for some, but for many the inequalities of the digital divide would persist. And how could we think about this in a different way? In all the clusters, we focus on work, workers, and livelihood. And one of the things that we're trying to do is to actually not assume that work is the immediate vehicle towards livelihood, that we need to think about distribution in other ways. Okay, and since I'm an English professor and Cola faculty have been essential, to use a word that I'm now scared of using, to the project, we're also interested in finding and developing new imaginaries of work, workers, and livelihood. And we want to facilitate these new imaginaries for work and livelihood that make no one expendable and that properly value and distribute essential work. We have events generated by individual clusters. Okay, so on the website where you see cluster events, you can click there and that will tell you which events are germane to that cluster. And then we have plenary and or crossover events. And the one to follow our opening remarks is one such event. Our presenters and participants cover a wide range of expertise, academic disciplines, sites and sectors, from activists and advocates to scholars and artists. Okay, we have over 40 speakers, comprising 5 artists, 10 activists, and scholars from 22 different disciplines. From 5 continents, I'm not going to list the continents, but we have 5 continents represented. And while we will be endlessly on Zoom, we have a variety of presentation formats from roundtables and panels to conversations and performances. So we've tried to, in a way, vary our presentation format. So even though you're sitting looking at a computer screen, you won't be subject to the same genre of event continually. To find events relevant to you, you can click on the button at the end of each cluster page to generate a list of events. Karen just showed you how to do that. Another way you can learn of events is by going to the schedule, use the search button. It's mostly, we hope, fairly intuitive. I think Ambush did a really great job with the website. But make it your friend, play with it, see what you'd like to attend. Also, more importantly, see what you don't want to attend. The website is intended as a guide through the pop-up.
And we will continue to see it grow. So with that in mind, we thought we'd show you this tab on resources. And basically, actually, just really just want to say a few final words about ways that you can help us make this a better resource and also take advantage of the Institute to collaborate and engage with other people. So if you go to the resources page, we've had a number of UT librarians headed up by Mary Rader, who is the head of Fine Arts, Humanities, and Global Studies. She's assembled a terrific group of librarians who have come to our various cluster meetings and have put together the beginnings of a bibliography for the project. So you can go to the library and you can see what they've found thus far. And also they're going to continue, so it's divided by clusters. They're going to continue to add materials from our speakers as they appear. So here are some from the folks we're about to hear from. Most of these sources are, many of them are linked to, are behind a paywall, as you would expect. And so you might have to use your own paywall to get to them if you're not UT connected to UT. But there is metadata on each of them that you can hopefully use. And often there's an abstract that's just doesn't happen to be on this one. We'd love it. I'm not sharing my screen all of this time. I've not been sharing my screen. Many apologies. But you all have been following along, nevertheless. Where is, here we go. So I clicked on this resources tab up top and was telling you about the Zotero library, which is here. So one of the ways in which you can contribute, engage with us, is by adding resources, including of your own work, to the library. So you can send it to the Rappaport Center email. That would be terrifically helpful, and we'll be updating that during the pop-up and even after. A few ways that you can communicate with us and each other during the pop-up. We have a Twitter account, and the handle is @futureofworkpui. So feel free to take a moment now and start to follow us. And then this will be a great place for you to go every day and see. We'll have updates here about what's on for the day, about when video recordings are edited and posted, when new resources appear. And also we have people who are happy to retweet your thoughts on what we're doing along the way. So please include @futureofworkpui in your tweets about these events. Also, we have some times in the schedule that are set aside, which are sort of virtual coffee breaks. So they're called Let's Keep Talking. Right now we have them set up once a week. We can set them up more if people are interested. But it's just an informal gathering for people to come together, network, meet each other, talk about some of the events that have occurred or just about your own work. We have also made all of the Zoom events as meetings rather than webinars to try to have an opportunity for people to see who else is in the room, to be able, we've made it so that you can sit there and have your personal chats with people you've been wanting to meet or talk to, and we won't be offended. You can also say, and let's meet up at Let's Keep Talking on Wednesday, the 26th at 3, or meet up some other time. You're totally free to do whatever you like there. Also, some of the meetings will stay around for an extra few minutes for people to continue to talk. So that's the setup. Thank you again for being with us. We're really looking forward to seeing what pops up over the course of the coming weeks. And we're now going to transition to our opening plenary, which is a discussion, our opening roundtable. Our keynote speakers are all people who've been here before. I'll say something about that, but now we'll just pause for, let's pause for 4 to 5 minutes to get them on their cameras on, and we'll get ready to go. So thank you again. We look forward to seeing you all.
Thank you.